On the flip side, both defenses, below average, and that's being kind. Ravens have won 3 in a row, Brew. Do they deserve to be 7-point favorites?
I got to be honest, I don't think so. Like, I was surprised when I saw this line. I just think it's very high. I get it that, you know, Washington, you can criticize the teams they've beaten, but they beat Cincinnati, you know, Tampa Bay. A lot of this, I think, is looking at what happened to them against Tampa Bay.
That was
and people
week 1.
really, I know. I'm shocked that this is this high.
You don't
even
think
though
it's about
it's in Baltimore?
That people think you're right about Baltimore and that they're a juggernaut?
No, I think Baltimore is going to win, but I just think the way Washington has played, to be 7-point dogs, I get it that it's in Baltimore. That surprised me. But, look, I think Jaden Daniels and the Commanders can score on that defense, but I think Baltimore is going to score on Washington's defense and outscore. I don't see a game like Cincinnati where basically nobody gets stopped. But I do think both teams will score. It'll be a fairly high-scoring game. And Baltimore, they may win by more than 7. I'm just surprised that line is that high.
Don't you think they're just going to run all over?
Yeah, they're gonna, and that controls Washington. Yeah, and that'll control the clock.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, they'll control the clock. Lamar will
I
make
don't
the
think
play.
it's going to be as close as you think. I think they're just going to run the ball. I think it's going to feel more like the Cowboys game.
Can I say something real quick
that would
about
be impressive.
At some point, I think you're going to have to divorce yourself from what teams should do and what they do.
The Ravens, you mean?
Well, it's not just the Ravens. I think you, a lot of times, and this is not a criticism of you specifically, I think a lot of people do this, they look at it and they're like, well, this team stinks at stopping this.
Yeah.
You're great at this, so let's just spam this thing. And then we watch football on Sunday, and teams are like, nope, this is the week we're running the bad plays.
Yeah.
No, this is the week we're trying this, or we're working on this. Like, I just feel like I've heard, and it's been logical before the fact, like, hey, this team is just going to run the ball and keep the ball and play keep away. And then sometimes teams are like, not what we're doing this week. And
they're always going to throw it, and they should with Lamar to some degree.
Sure.
But, yeah, I think they'll control time of possession.
So I understand the Ravens whooped Josh Allen. I don't think they can be touchdown favorites over any team with a good plus quarterback and legitimate weapons. So, like, they played the Chiefs. The Chiefs scored their season high against them. They played Joe Burrow. They scored their season high against them. Played Gardner Minshew, who's just throwing the ball to Devontae Adams, scored their season high against them. They played Dak Prescott, scored their season offensive high against them. They actually scored more in Cleveland, but they had a punt return, so you know what I mean? So now they totally shut down Josh Allen and that Bills team, but everyone, we can show you the Ravens' defensive numbers, if you can pass the ball, you're going to get to the mid-20s at a minimum against this team. And so that's why I just don't think, the Ravens are coming off an emotional overtime victory. So that already drains you a bit. The Washington's coming off their easiest game of the year. You know what I mean? They were kind of in strong position. You have those factors. You then also have the fact that I just think to cover 7, if the other team's getting to 27 minimum.
See, I don't think they can.
They can. I don't know if they.
I don't think the Commanders. I mean, they've got to just control the clock. I mean, it's basic football. That's the reason why the Ravens have been so dominant. If the Commanders cannot stop the run, and the Ravens are great at running, they should do that and control the clock.
It was the same thing with, I hear you, but one of my reasons I think 7 is high is because how the Ravens have held leads. Like, if they had blasted Dallas all 4 quarters and it was a 28-10 win, then I would think, okay, they're probably going to go out there and crush the Commanders. But they're liable to let them right back in the game. But now, so that's why I'm a little questionable about it.
Cincinnati's defense is worse than the Commanders. They scored 38 points, and Baltimore said, fine, we'll just get in a shootout.
Yeah.
The Raiders' defense is not very good. Their offense isn't that good either. That's why 26 is their season high for them. You're right that the Ravens have looked their most dominant, and this does not mean taking a knock at Lamar. It's just how the season has gone when Lamar's thrown the least. And as far as the dominant team victories, they've looked the most electric, you know what I mean, in that Cincinnati game. But then all of a sudden, this is the old thing Coach used to say about the Chiefs in 2018, which was, yeah, it's great to score that fast, one play, but then that terrible defense just right back on the field.
They're tired.
And so it's a weird spot because obviously if you're Baltimore, you're like, we just want to score every time we have the ball and score. It would make sense. Chunk plays quickly.
Henry breaks it.
Yeah.
70.
But I
That's
just
on the board.
go ahead.
Commanders have allowed an NFL worst.
Okay, well, so I want to talk about this now. This is going to be such an interesting game. Listen, in terms of the spread, I'm not a spread expert, right? Honestly, I'm really not. I use it as a frame of reference to be like, how much do they respect a team or how great do they think a team is? So I look at that spread and I say, they think that the Commanders aren't that good and that they think that the Ravens are that great, right? That's what I look at that. But conceptually, you can theoretically understand because a lot of it is hedging your bets of what you think is obviously going to happen. And when you look at the Commanders, right, they lost to the Buccaneers. That was week 1, obviously, but wasn't obviously their best game. It wasn't a bad game for Jaden Daniels. It was a first game of the NFL career. And then they eke out a win against the Giants, not the prettiest win by no means. And the Giants didn't have a field goal kicker and all of that. And so you could make the argument, if the circumstances were a little bit different, then the Commanders would lose that game. Then they dominate the Cardinals, they dominate the Browns, and they win this great game against the Bengals. But it's interesting because the Cardinals actually have a really legit offense from my viewpoint, especially if they're playing a bad defense, right? Like they can put up numbers, but they're not consistent. Kyler Murray isn't the most consistent player. Kyler Murray, like Shanahan has said, can be like the most dangerous player in the NFL, and he didn't say the second part, or like not at all, right? So Kyler has that potential, and the Commanders did a great job of stopping that, but it's also one of those things that's a little bit harder to always figure out, like, was that just a Kyler off game, or did Kyler have the potential to be great, but he just, wasn't. And the Browns have done nothing offensively and are struggling defensively as well, as everyone keeps running up the score on them. And everyone keeps scoring on the Bengals, right? Like everyone is putting up points against the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals are scoring 30 plus points in every single game except one, and yet they keep losing, right? So it's a field day for the Bengals. But that's what makes the Commanders versus the Bengals so interesting, because the Commanders played the Bengals, obviously, and the Bengals played the Ravens. So it does feel that there's possibility for it to be a similar game, because in a lot of ways they had similar games when they played each other respectively. But you're talking about now a rookie quarterback, right? So there is the feeling of, can he win? Can the Commanders hold their own in a back and forth, right? In a back and forth, when this other team is going to put up points, this team can get the job done. If you give the ball back 3 and out, or you're on your own 10 and you can't really move the ball, and now you're giving this other team great field position, it's problematic. It's trouble, right? That's a different level of pressure that the Commanders are facing. Now, they faced it to a somewhat degree versus the Bengals, and they really rose to the occasion, and it was incredibly impressive. I talked all about it. Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were genuinely speechless, right? Like they thought that they were going to be calling the game very differently, but then Jaden Daniels and that offense just kept going, and they were just like, oh my God, this is unreal, right? Like they were literally struggling to get the words out. As myself, as just a viewer watching it. But the reality is can they sustain that? It's a tall task for a rookie quarterback. And like I said in a previous video as well, that game versus the Bengals, there were a couple key plays where if they don't go that way for the Commanders, they don't win that game, or the score is not what it was. And that's football, right? You can say that about a lot of moments, but there was a couple big catches, the 3rd and long for the touchdown, like, it's, that is a low percentage throw. And so it's absolutely in the realm of possibility that ball just goes off the fingertips. The ball just kind of sails ever so slightly out of bounds, right? And then you're talking about something completely different. it's possible that they play the Commanders play the Ravens in this game, and those types of plays don't fall in favor of the Commanders. And therefore now they do lose by 7. They do lose by 10, 14, whatever it may be. But also there's, of course, the scenario where the Commanders are still able to answer the call, that Jaden Daniels is able to continue this level of consistency, and Cliff Kingsbury can also rise to the occasion and continue to come up with great game plans and put his team in a position to compete and score points and win. So it's going to be really interesting, honestly. It's just the Ravens have all of the support. They have all of the momentum because they are veterans, because of who they are, because of Lamar Jackson, right? Because of Derrick Henry. They have the ability. They should be favored to be expected to be able to be more dominant in any game than, say, the Commanders. Because you are dealing with a young team. You are dealing with Jaden Daniels, who only has so many games to him. But the thing is, though, is like we can look at the Ravens too, and this is where it's hard to figure out who the Ravens are, because they played the Bengals. They also could have lost to the Bengals without a doubt, right? It literally went to overtime. They beat the Bills, and convincingly, but it's widely seen that the Bills gave up. That's what a lot of people that's a lot of people's read on that game, is that the Bills kind of just really gave up. And who knows actually how good the Bills are right now. They got off to a hot start, but like they had a close game with the Cardinals, and it's like, well, how good are the Cardinals? And then they beat the I think it was the Patriots, and then they beat I forget, the Jaguars, right? So it's like, really, like, how good are the Bills actually in theory? And they beat the Cowboys, and I don't think the Cowboys are that good. They rolled the Cowboys, but then the Cowboys came back. And the Cowboys, like, literally almost won that game, and it was a very bizarre game. And then they lost to the Raiders, and the Chiefs are not that great of a team, quite frankly, and yet the Chiefs looked awesome versus the Ravens. They really did. Relative to how the Chiefs have looked against, say, the Falcons, against the Bengals, against any of these other teams, the Chiefs looked awesome versus the Ravens. The Chiefs looked like, yep, we just won the Super Bowl. And now that game ages even more poorly, technically. But again, it's week 1, and the Chiefs were technically at their healthiest at that point than they are now. So again, everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. And I also think that it took the Ravens a minute or two to kind of get situated with Derrick Henry. What is the game plan and all of that? So that's why I don't really have strong opinions for this game, honestly. Really, the way I'm looking at it is that I could either see the Ravens winning this game big and winning quite convincingly, or it's going to be a back and forth, and it's just going to be like, I don't know, man, who's able to dive on the fumble or not, right? Like, very similar to the Bengals versus the Ravens. I think if the Commanders beat the Ravens in the way how they kind of beat the Bengals, I would be just insanely, wildly impressed, right? I think that's when you can kind of figure out what do you believe is happening more. If the Ravens win this game, I'm not going to really necessarily be that impressed. I'm like, well, yeah, you should probably win this game. You're right, you're favored by 7. But if the Commanders win this game, then my level of being impressed will just be like through the roof. The last thing that I'll say is this. The Ravens, or the Commanders, have not really faced many competent defenses, right? The Browns, no. The Bengals, no. The Cardinals, no. The Giants, no. But the Bucks, who I think actually has probably a pretty decent, somewhat competent defense, although they're injured now, so it's a little bit harder. But I do believe in their defensive identity and what their head coach can do from the defensive side of the ball. And a great defensive coach, or just a very competent defensive coach, will more often than not be able to attack a rookie quarterback, right? They understand the weaknesses and the flaws, and they know how to exploit a rookie quarterback. The Ravens, even though they haven't been playing great defensively, they should be in a position to attack a rookie quarterback. They should be able to make a rookie quarterback feel consistently uncomfortable. We see that with all great defensive coaches and defensive teams, that they know how to get after a rookie, how to consistently make him uncomfortable. But again, the real question mark is can Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury continue to overcome that and answer that call? That, to me, is, of course, going to be the more interesting question. So does Baltimore deserve to be a 7-point favorite? Honestly, my conclusion is I got no idea, because I don't know who these two teams are right now. Are the Ravens a true juggernaut and a true top team? Or is their defense a legitimate liability for them? Are the Commanders, are they just beating bad teams, or are they for real? Jaden Daniels for real? That's what we're going to find out on Sunday. And I've said this before, where it's like, if the Ravens win this game and beat the Commanders, I won't learn a ton about the Commanders unless it's like a very specific loss. But if the Commanders win, then I learn a lot, tremendously. So this game's going to be exciting. 1 o'clock, Sunday at 1 Eastern. So I guess depending on where you live. 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 a.m., let's go. Or p.m., I mean, you know what I'm saying, 10 a.m., 11, 12 p.m. But I'm excited. This game is going to be exciting. I think no matter what, it's going to be exciting. Even if the Ravens win by over 7, I still think that it could be an interesting game where maybe it's like I don't know, like a 42-30 something, right? Like 42-35 or something, right? Like I could still see this game having a lot of action, right? Especially if the Ravens keep scoring, I could see it being where, as well as the Commanders keep scoring, and it's just going to be like, who flinches first, who doesn't score, who goes 3 and out, who gives up a big run on a punt or a kick return, right? Like, who does that? Who decides to go for it on 4th and 4 instead of kicking the field goal? Like, I think it's got potential to be potentially pretty interesting from like a coaching strategy, and decision making. And again, who can actually pull it off as well, in terms of execution. So I can't wait. This game, man. This game should be fun. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Baltimore Ravens versus the Washington Commanders? Who do you think? Do you think the Baltimore Ravens deserve to be a 7-point favorite? And who do you got in this game? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. Let's see you next time.